We need to be able to disagree agreeably, as I think President Obama once put it. Can I say to the Secretary of State that given that his department is going to be abolished at the very moment we leave the European Union, if he is looking for some consolation, can I point out it will mean he will no longer have to face the untrammelled joy of appearing before the Brexit Select Committee. And it gives me the opportunity to thank all of the members who have served on that committee and our wonderful team of clerks and advisers who has supported us with their expertise. At the heart of this bill is a gamble. It is a gamble with our nation's economy. Now, the Prime Minister has so much confidence in the government's ability to finalise a new relationship with the European Union by this time next year that this bill will prevent, by law, any extension of the transition period beyond December 2020. Now, if he succeeds, then his gamble will have paid off, although I wonder how detailed an agreement he will manage to achieve in that time. But if he fails, then the cliff edge of a no-deal Brexit beckons in just 12 months' time. Now, the pillar on which this confidence is built is the argument that because we have been aligned with the European Union for the last 40 or so years, then it should be a very easy deal to reach. But that argument would only have force if the government was planning to stay that closely aligned to the other 27 member states and their rules. But we know that that is not the case. The government wants to move away from European rules and regulations. Indeed, the Prime Minister said it today. No alignment with EU rules. And as that intention becomes clear to our EU negotiating partners, it will make the negotiations not simple, but much more complicated. So the question the House has to address, no doubt the bill will be passed today, is can a deal be completed when, as we have just heard, it took Canada 7 years to reach an agreement? Can it be completed in 12 months when we know we have to negotiate not just tariffs and quotas and rules of origin, but services? 80% of the British economy is built on the service sector. Data, aviation, medicine safety, cooperation on consumer rights, security, access to databases, which we will lose if we don't get this right, that help to keep us safe from terrorism. Foreign policy, cooperation on climate change, and a very long list of other matters that have huge importance for the British economy and British society. Of course I'll give way.
Gentlemen, and he has spent the last 12 months claiming that the Prime Minister never wanted to get a deal, and then he got one. Absolutely. Claiming the Prime Minister wasn't serious, therefore he had to produce a bill to hamstring this Parliament from progressing. Can he just for once admit we have a deal, that deal is going to happen this year, and use all his expertise and good services to rally round this Parliament, this government and this country to make sure we agree that deal by the end of the year and we can all move on at last?
I say to the right honourable gentleman that the bill that the last Parliament passed did not hamstrung the Prime Minister because he achieved a renegotiation. Although, to be fair, all he did was to accept 95% of his predecessor's deal and replace the backstop that was in it previously with a backstop that had been offered to the right honourable member for Maidenhead but had been rejected on grounds very clearly set out by the Prime Minister to the DUP conference in November of 2018. Namely, he would never ever accept a border in the Irish Sea, which is what he has promptly now done, which reminds us that it's not always wise to take the Prime Minister at his word. Now, I will give way.
I'm very grateful to my right honourable friend. I wonder if he's read the government's own impact assessment on this bill, which says, and I quote at paragraph 241, goods moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland will be required to complete both import declarations and entry summary declarations, flatly contradicting what the Prime Minister has been saying.
Well, my right honourable friend makes an extremely powerful point. We have been told repeatedly well, there will be no border in the Irish Sea. There is going to be a border in the Irish Sea, and that is going to have consequences for the way in which trade is conducted. It is also a gamble because of the clause in the bill which says that no minister is able to apply for an extension. Now, quite why the government needs to legislate to prevent something from happening, which is already made clear it has no intention of allowing to happen, namely an extension to the transition period, escapes me. But I would just gently point out to the House that the point of no return will be next June. Because under the withdrawal agreement, if a further extension hasn't been agreed between the parties by then, and the government is ruling it out, then there will be no possibility of extending the period. And I would say to the government, it will need to be really confident about how the negotiations are going by June of next year, which is not very far away, to be certain that it may not need that time, that additional time, to get what it wants. Now, there is no doubt that the Prime Minister is looking for a hard Brexit, because a free trade agreement of the type which he has put before the British people, and I grant him has won a mandate for, has already been assessed by this government as the second worst outcome for the economy after a no-deal Brexit. And it is extraordinary that we still do not have an economic assessment of the single most important decision that we are going to take, the nature of that future relationship, which has been presented before the House. Nothing. Silence. And I think history will record that was an act of irresponsibility. So I say to the House, and in particular to new members on all sides who I congratulate on their election, that as these negotiations unfold, businesses that we represent will be coming to us because they will have issues they want to see raised in those negotiations, concerned about the outcome of those negotiations. And some of the things they're looking for will not be consistent with the policy that the government itself has set out, because this should not be about ideology. It is about the practical implications, having thrown away, because that's what Brexit does, the best trading relationship we have with any countries in the world. It is about what kind of new long-term arrangements which will be put in place, on which our jobs and our factories and our communities depend. And if the government gets it wrong, I just say it will not be a question of getting Brexit done. It will be a question of some industries being done over by Brexit. I will give way for the last time in view of the time.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and he's making such a powerful speech. Now, does he not agree with me that the great concern for this place has to be that we were promised to take back control? And the greatest deceit of all is the fact that there will be no scrutiny within this place of any element. And I must emphasise on the trade deals and just what sort of impact that's going to have on our economy.
Well, I agree with my honourable friend, and that is a matter for great regret. Now, the final point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, is that our leaving of the European Union will create great cheer on those benches, just as it will sadden many of us on this side of the House, because the divisions it has created will not easily be healed, because many people still think this is a terrible mistake that will weaken our economy and our influence in the world. In the modern age, it is how we use our sovereignty that will determine how well we can advance our interests and protect our citizens. And if we have learned anything from the events of recent times, if we're going to deal with the great challenges we face as a world, climate change, the movement of people around the globe, dealing with threats to peace and security, making sure the global economy works in the interests of all, we can only do that by working together. And we are about to walk away from one of the most important relationships that enables us to do that. And I say to the government, we will hold it to account as this process develops and unfolds.